This podcast is brought to you by Giant Food. And today, more than ever, they are committed to you because we are all in this together so we can continue to share the little things that matter.
Recorded live from the lobby of the Line Hotel in Adams Morgan, Washington, D.C. Full Service Radio is proudly supported and hosted by Simplecast, the easiest way for a podcast creator to publish and distribute audio on the internet. For more information, visit simplecast.com.
Peace, everyone, and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting live from the lobby of the Line, D.C. This podcast is where dynamic people of color in the food and agriculture space share their personal food journeys, passions, and perspectives that stem from the land, all exemplifying the spirit of activism in their own edible way. Let's get started. Peace and welcome to the Edible Activist Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa L. Jones, broadcasting here on Full Service Radio. For today's show, I am speaking with community gardener and longtime food justice advocate, Duron Chavis. Duron has many accomplishments under his belt, establishing himself as a forward-thinking and action-taking leader in his Richmond, Virginia community. From serving as a clean air ambassador to founding the annual Happily Natural Festival, Duron has been committed to protecting the environment and changing the narrative in marginalized communities while promoting urban agriculture as a means for resilience and a solution for economic inequality. Duron, welcome to Edible Activist. I am so happy to speak with you today. Welcome.
Hey, what's up? How you doing?
I'm doing so well. Again, I have to shout out, we were talking about this just before we started, but I have to shout out Xavier Brown, who connected us. He's amazing. Thank you, Xavier. X, aka X.
Yeah.
He's great.
For sure.
Duron.
That's the homie, man. I really appreciate it.
He is definitely the homie, for sure. So, Duron, I haven't met you in person. I really don't know you, right? But we're going to be friends after this. We're friends now, okay? Like however you want to define that.
Sure.
We're going to be friends because you're cool. You're cool people. I've seen your talk, your TED Talk in person, not in person, but I saw it online and I so much enjoyed it. And have just seen other things that you posted. I love your work. And it seems like you've been doing this food justice systems work for a very long time, even though I don't know you. But does it feel like that to you? And I also just feel like because of the midst of COVID-19 and everything that you've been doing as of late, and currently, that this is just kind of the beginning, though you've been doing this for quite some time. Do you feel that way?
Oh, yeah. I mean, sometimes I feel like it's only been a flash in the pan. But we've been doing this for when I count off, it's like almost 12 years.
Wow.
You know what I mean? In some iteration or other. But I've been growing for about 8 years.
Okay.
You know, like doing the actual hands in the dirt. But the first 4 years was really just connecting farmers to low access communities, Black farmers to low access communities. So sometimes when I do the numbers, I'm like, I don't count those years because I wasn't growing, but I was still doing, aggregation of produce and farm and pop-up farmers markets. So I feel like that counts. But sometimes I forget that, I did. Before I started growing things, I was working with farmers hands-on in communities of color, getting produce to those folks through SNAP and things like that. So, sometimes it feels like it's only been a moment, but I'll be honest, ever since I started doing this, my life has changed. I mean, dramatically. Wow. The work has, it was a shift as an activist from a rhetorical, theoretical framework to an actual hands-on practice. And, dealing with the food system requires you to move from theory to practical application. It's impossible to live in a food justice framework and not have some sort of tangible, hands-on, something that I can touch, see, smell, hold. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
So being in that space is just sometimes time becomes a very existential conversation. It's like, how long have I been doing this? A minute. Okay. Yeah, and stuff moves so fast, but it's a beautiful
I
thing.
love that. I love that so much. So you were born and raised in Richmond, correct?
That's correct.
Awesome.
Yes, I'm a native.
Yes, I haven't been to Richmond in quite some time, but I love Richmond for many, many, many reasons. And when it comes to, the food landscape there, I definitely just want you to um, kind of give us a image, if you will, in your words of just what the food landscape in Richmond looks like. And I chuckled when I was watching your TED talk, and you were showing a map, and the map populated all these like brown spots, and you were just like, those brown spots represent people of color in these in these
Yeah.
marginalized areas. It's just it funny but not funny. But I'm like, yeah, there it is, there it is. Very clever, by the way,
Yeah.
very clever. And we're gonna tell folks where to find that TED talk because I watched it like 3 times. I enjoyed it that much. So if you can just walk us through like what the food landscape is in Richmond, Virginia, because a lot of folks don't know what that looks like.
Right. So, like many metropolitan cities across the country, Richmond, Virginia, is stifled or bears the scars of racial discrimination in the form of redlining, Jim Crow, etc. And we see the vestiges of those discriminatory policies, specifically as it relates to redlining and urban renewal in the capital city of Virginia. So in the south side of Richmond and in the east end of Richmond, we have high levels of concentrated poverty that is a direct result of the development of the interstate highway system, as well as the discrimination against people of African ancestry from accessing mortgages and financing through the New Deal efforts to build wealth through home ownership. Back in the 50s, we know that the federal government drew this initiative across the country to try to make it easier for folks to access the finances to mortgage homes and refinance homes. We know that Black communities were denied that on the basis of race, and so the redlining was, the actual denial of those neighborhoods that were Black, regardless of their quality. And then also we know that the interstate highway system destroyed major Black epicenters across the country. So, today, 2020, or when I did that talk, I think it was 2014, we know that it's high concentrations of poverty in that area because, if you deny Black people or anybody from being able to access loans and funding for their community, if you fast forward, you can see the results, right? If you said, okay, this community can have funding and those communities can, you see the difference. And so a lot of times people don't draw the connection between those discriminatory housing policies and the property values in those communities. And the conventional conversation is that grocery stores don't want to go into communities that are poor, but we know that that's a very subjective choice. But when you look at the maps of Richmond, Virginia, or any metropolitan city, predominantly people of color live in these areas that are concentrated in poverty. And those areas are the areas that, don't have access to full on grocery stores in their communities. And, the conversation is that because of population density or income averages and in those neighborhoods, that's why the grocery stores don't exist in those neighborhoods. So, I mean, the foodscape in Richmond, Virginia, on one level, is a direct result of the discriminatory policies as it relates to housing as well as urban development. But at the same time, we also know that the reason why Black people live in these communities in urban centers is a result of the Great Migration from rural communities into urban epicenters as a result of racial terrorism. People didn't want to live in a rural area because, the KKK, whether or not people had a membership card or not, were definitely adverse to Black people having full access to all of the, resources necessary to live a thriving, lifestyle. So people moved from the rural areas into the urban centers, searching for better opportunities and etc. So Richmond reflects that, just like Atlanta reflects that, Baltimore reflects that, um, DC reflects that, Harlem, Philadelphia, and etc. When we talk about how when you live in these areas, what happens when poverty is concentrated, right? And the overwhelming number of pathologies that are associated with uh, concentrating poverty um, really multiply as a result of, just locking people into uh, locking people into very stifling conditions where you don't have resources, there aren't any opportunities, education is poor, all of these different things that we talk about when we talk about poverty correlates with race. Um, so anyway, the USDA ERS map uh, uh, indicates that these areas um, in Richmond, South Side and North Side, don't have access to healthy food. So, the work has looked like, how do we resource those communities up? Not only through like the infinitesimal search for a amenable grocery store, but more direct action in terms of how do we build up the community to take ownership of aspects of the food system, whether it be production, distribution, processing, whatever. Like the conversation is like, how do we build community capacity to respond to the need for food justice and in those communities?
When I was again on your site, there was a quote that you had on there. You might even said this quote at your TED Talk some years back, and it was the one by is it Paulo Freire?
Gary,
Gary.
yeah, Paulo Freire.
And it says the oppressed must be their own example in the struggle for their redemption.
Mhm.
And when I think about that, and it definitely hit me, and it's just always, always at the forefront of my mind, in our mindsets, and those who, are in these oppressed environments and spaces, it's when does it become a thing, or when does it become like, how do we tap into um, those spaces or those mindsets to change those mindsets? Because a lot of this, is going to be a mindset change in some
Yeah,
respects. Um,
yeah, definitely.
and that work is hard. You just can't change
Yeah,
anyone's mind. That's hard work.
yeah, yeah. So When I entered into this work, through a platform that we created called Happily Natural Day, which is a festival. But the thematic mission of the festival was to promote cultural identity, social change, and holistic health and wellness for communities of color, specifically African communities. The whole idea was for us to love ourselves. And that part of that reasoning was because the system of white supremacy uh, has created a hierarchy of human value where communities of color, Black people specifically, are at the bottom rung and are taught to negate their identity in order to assimilate and, flourish by disassociating themselves with their Blackness. So part of that conversation is, how do we think of ourselves? What do we see of ourselves? How do we see ourselves in contrast to whiteness? And a lot of that is, a deep dive into what we call internalized oppression and internalized racism. And what happens is that when you live in a society of white supremacy, the system creates all of these false realities where Black people are savages, are uneducated, don't have the capacity to do, this whole dependency complex that revolves around the narrative of white supremacy doing a good job when they colonized and enslaved Black people. And so by virtue of that, like the vestiges of that lives on in our day to day as we, try to live and navigate and, engage with, society as a greater whole. So that work of detoxing, communities, Black communities specifically, from these ideas that Black people can't, or that the white man's ice is colder, is a real, it's a real reality. It's a challenge, but what we have at our disposal are so many examples of Black people, men, women, organizations, movements, moving in a very deliberate and intentional direction towards self determination and self sufficiency. So, one of the most influential for me has been the Garvey movement. Marcus Garvey um, built a movement of millions across the country around the idea that Black people can do for self and create systems that would serve their needs and build, a new reality for people of African ancestry in the wake of, Western hegemony and imperialism that has, emerged over the last 400 years. Another tool, the civil rights movement, people like Fannie Lou Hamer, Stokely Carmichael, or Kwame Ture, they serve as really amazing examples of what you can do or what we have done to counter that narrative of Black people not having the capacity. I mean, Fannie Lou Hamer is an example explicitly in terms of in terms of just food, agriculture. We know her more reverently in relationship to her Mississippi Democratic Convention speech, but what is less talked about is her work around the Freedom Farms Cooperative, and her efforts to ensure that farmers have land and housing that reflects the building of a very a very what do you call it, holistic approach to the needs of Black people in not only rural but also urban environments. And then the Black Panther Party, the Black Liberation Army, Republic of New Africa. We can go way back and think about people like Gabriel Prosser, Nat Turner, Toussaint Louverture. These are people who understood the importance of Black people standing up, affirming their identity, creating realities where they were self-determining. And I very much believe in my philosophy of this work that it is uber important, throwing back to the quote from Paulo Freire, for people of African ancestry to be the example of their own, be the exemplary of their own liberation, not looking outside of their own community, but seeing themselves as the protagonist in this work to create a thriving, holistic, resilient, and sustainable reality for themselves. And now I try to apply that to the work of food justice.
Thank you. Thank you so much for breaking that down. That was beautiful. All right, guys, we are going to take a really short break and we'll be right back.
You're listening to Perfect Day, produced by Artists Authentic. For more of Authentic's work, visit allornothingstudios.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Giant Food. Whether you are concerned about diabetes, heart health, losing weight, or just want to improve family meal times, Giant has a team of nutritionists ready to help you make the best decisions to meet your health and wellness goals. You can check out their personalized consultations online or by phone. Just go to giantfood.com/nutrition, or they have nutritionists who are available to answer any of your questions at nutrition@giantfood.com. Okay, so Duron, you have been working on a very exciting project as of late, right? Because everything just took a turn within a matter of days, weeks ago. It just went left real quick. And you, in response to COVID-19, the work still continues. And you have been executing a number of garden bed projects around Richmond, and what you call Resiliency Garden, a Resiliency Garden project. And I have been beaming with joy seeing and I know you have too, I'm talking as if I initiated this project, just the overwhelming response from those who have just contributed to this project and just willing to step in. And so I know audience is just like, what the heck are we talking about? But sorry, I just got so excited. I just went off. But definitely want to have you touch on your garden project that you've been working on as of late with others. I know others have definitely been helping you to execute this around Richmond. So we can just touch on that a bit more and just learn about the amazing things that have come out of this.
Oh, yeah. So, what's funny about this stuff is that I was just talking to a friend of mine yesterday. We've been talking about food security for a long time. I mean, you asked me how long I've been in this work and like, how does it feel? Does it feel like it's been a short time? When I look back, we've been talking about food security for at least 12 years. So when COVID-19 popped out, I, immediately it was like, okay, this is not a test. This is not a test. This is the real deal. People are being laid off. People can't go to the grocery store due to deficiencies. There's really real pressures related to the food system. We're seeing reports from major meat processors that they're not able to meet the demand because of folks at their plants having this issue. Before that, we were hearing about the immigrant communities that are the bulk of our food production labor, not having access to their visas and etc. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is real. The ish is hitting the fan. So when it comes down to us responding, like with the Resiliency Garden project, it was really designed to be an immediate response to the insecurity related to food that people would face as COVID-19 started to take root, in our society. One of the things that we thought would be important was to be like, all right, well, on a therapeutic level, people need to be able to have something to hope for. So growing their own food is one element of that. But then beyond that, just in terms of just creating an opportunity for people to start to really respect, understand, and appreciate where their food comes from would be through the actual process of growing their own food. So we started uh, delivering raised beds to community, and it's been a wow moment for me. I'm really I'm going through this whole like deep reflection and introspection around the learnings that are coming out as a result of this work. Basically, what we've been doing is we've been asking community members, do they need help with food security? And if they do need help with that, we are delivering them a raised bed, 6x4, 24 square feet, so that they can grow their own food. And I mean, as a 101 introduction into like this work, it is an amazing opportunity. There's so many. We've received almost 300 requests for raised beds, and this has only been a month of promoting. And I don't want to say we really promoted it. I mean, it went kind of viral in our community, which is dope. But we never pushed it out there like that. It was just something that people just heard about. And that work has really inspired me because it's like, okay, what we've been talking about for all these years is now becoming very practical, very important to people across, the community. And, my hope and vision is that beyond just people getting their own raised bed, they'll start to understand that this is an opportunity for you to start making money or using food as a form of currency, trading, bartering, beyond bartering and trading, but also appreciating that there are hands that have been growing this food for you for years and they need support too. So, how to connect to your local farmers, how to appreciate the value added work that folks do. It's one thing to grow food, it's another to turn it into a product that can be uh, uh, sold or bartered, across the system. So, yeah, I mean, I am thoroughly humbled by the opportunity to do what we've been training to do. I say that, I laugh because it's like it feels like it feels like what we've been doing for the last 12 years is training for this moment. It's like this moment was like in the ether, like circling around, kind of like, you know, sending warning shots, letting us know, like, yeah, at some point the food system might feel a bit compromised, and this work will show up as uh, a sign of hope, a way out, a strategy for resiliency. And so when we started calling it Resiliency Gardens, it was really, you know, building on this conversation about climate justice, this conversation around food justice, this conversation around racial justice. And we were like, if our community gets hit by a significant, event such as COVID-19, what is it that we're going to put in play that will help us bounce back and pivot in a way that would allow us to move forward without it being a significant hiccup? I mean, even my own personal narrative, I worked for a botanical garden that shut down its community engagement programs and let me go as a result of COVID-19. And in my strategies for resiliency, I had to pull a toolkit out and be like, boom, all right, well, I don't have a job with these guys anymore, but that doesn't mean that the work stops. I've been doing this for a long time, even before I worked for the botanical garden. So how do we create strategies and systems so that we can maintain the workflow and continue to meet the needs of community? So that's just really been what it's been all about, man. And it's a beautiful journey. It's a very, it's an opportunity for wonderment and joy. I live in this space of just constant, immersion and just wonder of wow, this is amazing. We built the system and it works. Oh, well, we need to refine it. But at the same time, thankful for the interdependence that community members are showing and supporting the work. It's not me. It's really about people showing up and saying, hey, I want to support this. I believe in this. And I want to put my full self in play to help deliver wood and make a donation and build raised beds and grow seedlings and all that type of stuff. So this is really just a really awesome opportunity to show what community can do when it really believes in itself. So,
wow. Well, I wanted to laugh with you earlier because, like you said, this is the work that you've been promoting and doing for the longest time. And it was interesting because I had a writer reach out to me some weeks ago to do a story just about my work. And then when everything took a turn, she reached out. And she was just like, hey, so sorry. Things have been crazy, obviously, with COVID-19. We're still going to do the story, but just wanted to check in to see if, if anything has changed, if you're handling things differently. And I didn't know how to respond to her. I really just didn't. And so it took me a while to get back to her. And I was just like, well, I'm not understanding, what you're asking. I was like, is the story changing? I mean, I understand there's some aspects, you guys may be, adjusting, due to the climate. And she was like, no, the story isn't changing. I just want to see if you've been handling things, differently with COVID-19. And, my real response, I don't even remember if I responded back to her because I have so many emails and I have to prioritize. But anyway, the point was, in my mind, I'm like, if you've listened to the shows and if you've seen the work online, what we're experiencing is what every single edible activist that I have talked to and every Black and brown person on the land has been working towards and working on nothing has changed. The mission has never changed.
Right.
The work has never changed.
Yeah.
So I don't understand.
It's the same stuff.
I was just banging my head against the wall. No, this is the point. We have been talking about this to prepare everyone, including myself, to this point. So no, nothing has changed. So I literally, you're talking the whole time and I'm nodding my head crazily, right, Ron.
Yeah, that's the same. It's funny because I try to be very graceful in that because I'm like, yo, we've been talking about this for a long time. I'm not trying to throw it in your face I told you so. But that's part of, that is part of the inner dialogue. I thought we've been, I heard about this from somebody else. So the farmers that engaged me were like, yo, what do you do if the grocery store's closed? And now we're in a very real reality. When you go to the grocery store, I don't even really want to go. in the grocery store because, all of the, you know, rigmarole that you got to go through. You got to make sure you got your mask on.
Mhm.
You got a million people in there. People that might not think about social distancing. You know what I mean? Like, I ain't trying to catch any, you know, I ain't trying to. I'm trying to stay safe. I got kids. I want to make sure that I'm living and thriving. So, all that anxiety is bundled up and like, well, what can I do to make sure that I don't have to go to this thing? And it's funny to me. So I just laugh. Personally, I just try to engage the community with grace and like this is not nothing new for me as far as a conversation, but welcome to the dialogue. You know what I mean?
Now you're in tune.
Yeah, like welcome to the room. Like we've been talking about this for a while. What's your name? What brings you to the discussion?
Exactly. But you say just approach it with grace and welcome. Here we are. Here we are.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Duron, I'm before we close, I'm really curious into what your perspective is on the new normal. And I kind of already know that just gathering from our conversations. And again, none of this is new. But how do you see because it will be a new normal. Things will definitely be different.
Right.
And
Yeah.
what is your just given just recent events and just even with your own experience with departing ways with your job due to this the situation, the climate, and working on the garden resiliency project. And in addition to just the years of always, being in this space, what do you see as the new normal moving forward?
Wow, that's a great question. So, I've been thinking about this a lot. And one of the forefront thoughts is that we've been social distanced for a long time. Like, this is not like social distancing as far as like race, like, is not new. It's like there, I'd say, well, we've been like, there's parts of my city where like the amount of Black people that live in those areas very minimal. Think about gentrification, think about just urban development. But beyond just the de facto desegregation of schools and neighborhoods, the new normal, I'm hoping that we're writing, the formula for how we engage as communities. I feel like this opportunity is primed for us to design and co-create what our realities will be in, perpetuity, irrespective of the pandemic. Like, what does it look like for us to draw closer as communities and really lift up the theme of interdependence? Like, what does that mean? Like, are you in it for like a hot second when it's convenient? Or do you really believe in like intrinsically like human kind has a accountability to one another beyond the divisions of religion, race, class? So I feel hopeful in this moment, and I think that we have a lot of opportunity to really put into practice what it means to be a true human family. And I feel like the new normal for us, for me in particular, is really around having your own. If that makes sense to people, like what do I have as an individual, as a community, as an organization, and how do I share? And how do I work in collaboration with others that have other things that I don't have, so that we as a community can grow and be prosperous and not be stressed out and feeling anxiety and etc. I hope that's the normal. I also respect the fact that, when it comes to conversation about inclusivity and racial equity, like all of that, ironically has gone on the back burner.
Oh my
It's funny.
God.
Think about it. Like, really, like before COVID-19, everybody was racial equity this and inclusivity that and diversity that. I have not heard nobody talking about any, any of
I'm
that.
trying not to burst out laughing. There's a lot that has simmered down since all of this. Yes. The list rolling.
Yo! Wild to me.
Yeah.
Like, in the wake of hearing that Black communities are more adversely affected by COVID-19, how diminished the conversation around inclusivity and diversity is. I ain't saying that people ain't really won't about that life, but it seems like there's a lot of marketing and PR around their inclusivity and diversity efforts. And when those monies were not really available to continue that conversation, people shut their gates up. So I wish them the well, but I just feel like this community, this type of work doesn't. When the crisis hits, it really is a true test of how really about that life those organizations and individuals really were.
Speak on
Because
it.
this is the time to really show up. You know what I mean? And this is the time to really put the pedal to the metal and really show how committed you were or are to that work. And a lot of people are, showing their true colors, and it's beautiful. I think it's majestic to see that, and I'm like, all right, okay, well, resiliency is the true conversation, and how do you build resiliency? And do you build resiliency by stopping your work around diversity and inclusion? That's a hell of a question. You know what I'm saying? I personally don't think you can. But maybe some of these organizations feel like, you know, they can shut down their inclusivity and racial equity work and still build resiliency. I don't know how that works. Maybe, the next couple of months will show me how that works. But I really don't think that works in that way. So I feel like the new normal for all the courageous and brave folks will mean, how do you wrap your head around being socially distanced but still engaging communities and providing resources and access to capital so that communities are not marginalized. And I'm thoroughly excited to find the folks that are ready to talk about that type of collaborative, collective impact activity.
Duron, where can folks find you, and how can we donate to the project? Because we want to support.
Yeah. I'm Duron Chavis on everything. Happily Natural Day. You can always reach out by any form of social media, whether it's whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. Our website is thenaturalfestival.com. That's where we're doing all of our organizing right now. People can go in and register as volunteers. They can pledge in-kind support, make a donation, or if you're interested in getting a raised bed, you can hit us up, and we'll definitely. We're still accepting requests. I mean, we're at 300 plus at this point, and I'm excited about it because, even in my journey on the unemployment line, like, I'm doing my thing, but this is giving me, something to get up and do every day. Like, who's next? Who am I going to meet today that's going to be an addition to this complex divine network of human care and earth care. So yeah, reach out to the Natural Festival, Duron Chavis, Happily Natural Day, do the Google search, and hit us up, man. I'm looking forward to meeting anybody that's of like mind who wants to contribute to the new normal of interdependence in our community.
Bet. All right. Y'all heard that. Okay, Duron. So we are going to do a quick rapid fire before I let you go. Are you ready?
Right. Yeah, let's go.
All right. So what is your favorite veggie?
My favorite veggie is ginger right now.
Ooh, I love ginger every day. Smoothies,
Yeah,
especially.
ginger is hitting right now. This is giving me all the mucus, decongestion that I need.
Yep. Yep. All right.
Yeah.
What is your favorite fruit?
Ooh. Strawberries. I'm on a strawberry kick. Um, really not feeling the fact that strawberries go bad so fast.
I know.
Yeah, it's like the gift and the curse. Like they're so delicious, but I got to eat them within 7 days.
Yep. Yep. Well, at least that's your excuse why you ate them all so quickly, you know?
Look, I'll tell that to my family.
Okay, I will. You didn't hear that, family.
It was gonna go bad anyway. I mean, I had to eat them.
I'm just saying. Okay, sweet, spicy, sour, salty, savory, or bitter?
Savory. Savory. I am a big fan of curry, so I'm on a savory kick, like heavy.
One action step someone can take towards edible activism.
Plant a seed, watch it grow, harvest it, and put it inside of your dish for dinner.
There it is. There you have it. Duron, thank you so much for chatting with me today. This was an absolute pleasure. Once again, soaked up words, soaked up wisdom. So thank you for spending your time with me. And
thank you.
All right. Peace, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We are here live on Full Service Radio every Wednesday at 11 a.m., where you can catch today's episode on fullserviceradio.org, as well as iTunes and Spotify. Be sure to follow me at Food Talks in Color on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Are you an edible activist? Sure you are. Come join me on the show. I would love to feature you. Just shoot me a DM on the gram. Peace and blessings all. And remember, there is no culture without agriculture.